I'm Cassandra. I can still feel the Caesar dressing dripping off my nose as I heard them laugh. It wasn't a polite titter or an embarrassed chuckle. It was a full-throated, head-thrown-back laugh that filled the restaurant. My husband, Ethan, was nearly doubled over, and his mother, Victoria, had both hands pressed to her chest, tears streaming down her face. I sat there, with Caesar dressing in my eyebrow and a piece of romaine lettuce stuck to my cheek, staring at them as if from a great distance. It was like I was underwater, and they were on the surface, the sound of their laughter reaching me all garbled and distorted. "Look at her," Victoria gasped. "Making a scene again." The whole dining room fell silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. The birthday party in the corner, the young couple by the window, the old man eating alone near the door who looked up from his soup. Even the waitress froze mid-step, a pitcher of water in her hand, mouth slightly open. I slowly reached for my napkin, pressing it against my forehead, then my cheek, and finally the tip of my nose. I dabbed at my eyebrow and set the napkin down on the table. Then I stood up. Ethan finally noticed something had changed. His laughter faded a bit. "Cass, come on. It was an accident." But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the space above his head, as if reading something written on the wall behind him. In that moment, I made a decision, a clear, calm, and final one. But let me rewind. To understand what happened next, you need to know how I got to that restaurant, who I was before that dinner, who Ethan was, who Victoria was, and what the three of us had been doing to each other for the past 4 years. I met Ethan at a work happy hour on a Friday evening in September, about 5.5 years ago. I was working as a graphic designer at a small advertising agency in Denver, Colorado. Ethan had just joined as a marketing strategist after moving from Seattle. My coworker, Lily, dragged me to the bar across the street. She said I'd been eating lunch at my desk for 2 weeks straight, and it was medically concerning. I almost didn't go. I'd had a long week, and I had a project due the next morning. I was wearing an old black blouse with a loose thread near the collar that I'd been meaning to fix. As I rode the elevator down, I thought I looked tired and uninteresting, not someone about to meet anyone special. And then there was Ethan, standing by the bar in a charcoal gray suit, laughing at a joke. He had this presence. He was fully there, not checking his phone every few minutes or scanning the room for someone more interesting. When I talked to him, he looked at me like I was the only person in the bar. He asked follow-up questions and remembered details. I told him I'd grown up in Boulder, and 20 minutes later, he asked me about the hiking trails there. I mentioned that I'd been trying to learn how to make bagels and had ruined 2 batches. He laughed in a warm, non-mocking way. We talked for hours. I missed my project deadline and stayed up until 3 a.m. finishing it, but I was genuinely happy about it, which was so unlike me. The next day, he texted me. Not just a simple hey, but a real sentence. "I looked up bagel making tips last night, and you're supposed to use filtered water. Thought you should know before batch number 3. I stood in my kitchen, in my socks, holding a cold cup of coffee, and stared at that message. Then I smiled in a way that felt foreign to my face. 2 weeks later, we went on our first date. We had dinner at an Italian place downtown and then took a walk in Civic Center Park, even though it was a bit chilly and neither of us was dressed for it. By the end of October, we were texting every day. By Christmas, we were spending the holidays together. Ethan in those early days was truly wonderful. He was attentive, funny, and caring. One night, when he thought I had food poisoning, he drove me to the ER. It turned out to be a stomach bug, but he sat with me for hours, reading me articles on his phone about home remedies. He called my mom on her birthday and saved her number as Mom in Waiting. He fixed the leaky sink in my apartment without being asked. After about 18 months, we moved in together to a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice neighborhood with a park nearby. We split the rent evenly. I made $62,000 a year, and he made around $70,000. I proposed a budget plan, and he proposed marriage. It was a quiet Sunday morning. We were going to get pastries. He knelt down on the living room floor, with a ring he'd designed himself. It was exactly what I wanted, a rose gold band with a sapphire. I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married a year later in a small garden ceremony outside the city. There were 50 guests, twinkling lights, a playlist Ethan made, my college friend, Sarah, as my maid of honor, and a cake with 3 different flavors because we couldn't decide. It was the happiest day of my life. But I didn't realize that when I married Ethan, I was also marrying Victoria. Ethan's mother lived about an hour north of us in a large house in a wealthy suburb. She was 65, retired from a career in finance, and she had 2 modes, overly enthusiastic and subtly critical. At first, Victoria was nice to me. She hugged me at family dinners and sent me recipes. But I could always sense a faint undercurrent of disapproval. She'd tell Ethan, in front of me, that I seemed like a down-to-earth person, which I knew was a back-handed compliment. The first real problem came at Thanksgiving, about 9 months after our wedding. We hosted at our place. I spent 2 days cooking. I made a turkey, stuffing, sweet potato casserole, green beans, and a homemade apple pie. Ethan's sister, Grace, came with her husband, David, and their kids. Victoria arrived with a store-bought cheesecake and a pan of her special stuffing. She set it on the counter next to mine without a word. At dinner, she said, I brought my stuffing because Ethan has loved it since he was a kid. She laughed casually, but I felt a pang. I watched Ethan take a bigger serving of his mother's stuffing. I told myself it didn't matter, but my jaw was tight for the rest of the meal. And Ethan said nothing. Not that night, not when we were cleaning up, and not later when I was washing the dishes. I told myself I was being too sensitive, that it was just one Thanksgiving, one dish. But over the next few years, small incidents piled up. Victoria started coming over more often. She'd bring a bottle of wine or a bouquet of flowers, but she'd always sit at the kitchen table and talk to Ethan while I was making coffee or doing something in the kitchen. She'd sit with her back slightly turned away from me, as if I was just an unimportant fixture. Her comments were always in the form of questions. Cassandra, are you still doing that exercise class? I heard some of those can be too strenuous. I'd only mentioned going to a yoga class once. She made it seem like I was doing something reckless. Ethan was always present in the room but absent from the situation. Whenever Victoria said something that made me uncomfortable, he'd look at his phone, change the subject, or laugh at an unrelated joke. One night, about 18 months after the wedding, I brought it up to him. We were in bed, the lights off. I need to talk to you about your mom, I said quietly. He made a noise, not dismissive but like he was bracing himself. I feel like she doesn't like me, I said. And when she says things, you don't say anything, and it makes me feel alone. He paused. My mom likes you. She's just opinionated. It's not personal. It feels personal, I replied. She does this with everyone, he said. She was like this with Grace's husband for a few years. It's just how she is. The problem is that you don't stand up for me, I said. You just let it happen. What do you want me to do? She's my mom. I'm not going to argue with her every time she says something, he said. I'm not asking you to argue. Just acknowledge what's going on and back me up a little, I pleaded. I do back you up, he insisted. When? I asked. He was silent for a long time. I'm not going to list every time I've defended you, Cass. I'm on your side. I didn't say anything. We both went quiet, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, telling myself that this was just part of marriage, that I needed to be more understanding. But things got worse when I got a promotion at work. My title changed to senior graphic designer, and my salary jumped from $62,000 to $78,000. I was so proud. I'd worked hard, staying late and taking on extra projects. I told Ethan over dinner, and he hugged me and said he was proud of me. He opened a bottle of champagne and made a toast. For a couple of days, everything was perfect. Then we had dinner at Victoria's house. She made Ethan's favorite steak and potatoes. When we sat down, she said, "Congratulations on your promotion, Cassandra. Senior graphic designer. Sounds very corporate." The way she said corporate made me uneasy. She added, "You'll be so busy. I always think about women with high-pressure jobs. It's hard to balance work and family." The table went quiet. Ethan just said, "We're not in a rush." I ate my dinner and said it was delicious. On the drive home, I thought about her words and how Ethan had responded. A few days later, I brought it up to Ethan. "When your mom made that comment about my career, why did you just answer like it was a normal question?" He put his keys down. "What did you want me to do?" "I wanted you to tell her it's none of her business," I said. "She's 65. She asks about grandkids." "It's just what she does," he replied. "It's not about grandkids. It's about her implying that my promotion is a problem." "And you just went along with it," I argued. "You're reading too much into a short comment," he said. "I'm reading exactly what's there," I retorted. His expression changed to one of patient exhaustion. "I'm not going to fight with my mother every time she says something you think is an attack. I'm not asking you to fight. Just stand up for me," I said. "I do stand up for you, but not every dinner has to be a fight about my mother's opinions," he snapped. I stared at him. "You're saying it's my interpretation, like I'm imagining this," I said. "I didn't say you were imagining it," he said. "You said I decided to interpret it as an attack. What does that mean if not that the attack isn't real?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "I think you're too sensitive to what my mom says because you've decided you too have a problem. Your sensitivity makes everything seem worse." The kitchen was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I said, "Okay." "Okay?" he asked. "Yeah, okay," I replied, and I left the room. He didn't follow me. I sat in our spare room, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen, feeling like something had shifted in our relationship. Over the next year, I started to doubt myself. I'd replay conversations in my head, wondering if I was overreacting. I kept a note on my phone with dates and quotes, trying to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things. Then came the dinner at the Italian restaurant. Ethan's cousin, Ryan, was in town, and Victoria suggested we all go out. The restaurant was a nice place that Ethan and his family had been going to for years. We arrived, and Ryan was already there with his girlfriend, Mia. Mia was warm and friendly, and I liked her right away. For a while, it felt like a nice evening. We ordered drinks, and Ethan was in a good mood. But then, when the salads came, I was laughing at something Mia said. I wasn't paying attention to the table. Victoria reached across for the bread basket, and her elbow hit the back of my chair. I was leaning forward, and my face went straight into the Caesar salad. My face was covered in dressing and lettuce. In that split second before anyone reacted, there should have been concern. But instead, Ethan and Victoria started laughing. It was a full, unrestrained laugh. Victoria said, making a scene again, as if it was a pattern of mine. I reached for my napkin, stood up, and said, "I'm going to go." Ethan tried to stop me, but I just said, "I'll get a ride. Stay and enjoy dinner." I walked out of the restaurant into the night, with salad dressing on my face. I stood on the sidewalk, called a car, and waited. My phone buzzed twice, both times from Ethan, but I didn't answer. When I got home, I washed my face and sat on the edge of the bed. I opened the Notes app on my phone and scrolled through the 43 entries. I realized how much had been building up over the years. Ethan came home a couple of hours later. He tried to explain it away as an accident, but I told him, it's not about the accident. It's about you and your mom laughing at me. He said it was a joke, but I was done. I told him I needed time to think, and that night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed without touching. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and opened my browser. I typed Denver divorce attorney. I didn't call anyone that day, I just read about the process for hours. A few days later, I called Sarah and asked for the name of a good family law attorney. She gave me the name of an attorney, Laura Thompson, who had helped her sister in a divorce. I made an appointment with Laura. I told Ethan I had a dentist appointment. When I met Laura, I told her everything. I talked for almost an hour and cried a bit. She asked me some questions about our finances. We rented an apartment, had a joint checking account with about $15,000 in it, and I had my own savings account with $25,000. We had no kids. She told me to start looking at our accounts to see if there were any unusual transactions. That night, I logged into our joint account for the first time in a while. I noticed a transfer of $900 to an unknown account from 10 days ago. I took a screenshot and sent it to my personal email. Over the next few days, I found out that Ethan had been giving money to Victoria from our joint account without telling me. There were 6 transfers over the past 4 months, totaling over $6,000. And he had a credit card in his name with a balance of nearly $4,000 billed to Victoria's address. I was shocked. I didn't confront Ethan right away. I made another appointment with Laura. I told Ethan I was leaving. Laura helped me with the divorce process. Ethan contested some of the asset division, saying he'd contributed more in the early years. But in the end, we split the joint account 50-50, and he had to reimburse the $6,000 he'd given to Victoria. The divorce took 8 months. After it was over, I found a small 1-bedroom apartment in a trendy part of the city. Sarah helped me move in. We put together some furniture and ordered pizza. As I looked around my new apartment, I felt a sense of freedom. I started a new bagel making project in January. And when I took my first successful batch out of the oven, I thought, I can do anything again. I was finally free from the toxicity of my marriage and ready to start a new chapter.